August 22nd, 1993. It's a Sunday evening here, and got Mr. Truman Sanders, and wanted to ask you some questions kind of about the past here. And wanted to start by asking you what year you were born in and where you grew up.
I was born in January 14th, 1908, and I was born in Center, Texas, but I grew up in the lower Rio Grande Valley in Hidalgo County. And
How many years did you live down there?
about 20, well, from 1919 until 1944 or 5.
And where'd you go to high school?
Went to high school there, and then I went to SMU, 1 year in SMU, and transferred down to the University of Texas. And then I went to school there 1 year and left school, busted out of school. My father busted me out.
How did you do that?
Well, he just told me he'd spent all the money. I'd spent all the money in 2 years that he'd put up for 4, and I was on my own.
And how much school had you finished then?
I had 2 years.
And so how did you finish after that?
Well, I worked at home in the bank for a while and had a little altercation with the family. I left home and went to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1929.
And what altercation? You had a falling out or disagreement?
Yeah, I had a Pontiac Roadster, and I had a date one Sunday, but I'd been out Saturday night real late, and my father had told me that he didn't mind my going out on Saturday, but if I did, I had to go to church on Sunday, or Sunday school. And this particular day, I was out a little late and didn't get up and go to church or Sunday school. And when I went out to get in my car that afternoon, he had taken the keys. And I asked him for them. He said, no. He said, you didn't come to church or Sunday school like you're supposed to, and I'm going to take the keys and keep them a while and teach you a lesson. So I got mad, packed my bag, and left home the next morning.
And do you remember what year Roadster it was?
Yeah, it was about a 1928.
And was it his car or your car?
No, it was my car.
It was your car?
Yeah, my car.
So you left home without the car?
Yeah, oh yes. He had the keys.
Huh. And did you ever get the car back?
No. He sold the car later on. But I left and went to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
And how old were you then?
I was 20.
And why did you go to Tulsa?
Well, I had a friend that lived in Tulsa. And I caught rides all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
From where?
From the valley, Rio Grande Valley.
That's quite a trip.
It took about 3 days to get up there.
And where did you spend your nights?
Well, the first night I spent in San Antonio, and the second night I spent in, I believe it was Oklahoma City, I believe, the second night. And then the next day I got in Tulsa where he lived, and then I stayed with him when I got to Tulsa.
Did you have money to stay at a hotel or something? Or?
A little, just a little, very little, maybe $30, $40 total, which didn't last very long. I was in Tulsa in 1929 when the crash occurred. And for a long time, I had a hell of a time getting a job. Finally got a job in an oil refinery, working 11 to 7 for Mid-Continent Refinery, unloading bricks out of a boxcar.
Wow.
And then I got a chance to go in as a manager of the men's department of a new store that opened up in Tulsa. And I worked there for about 3 or 4 months, and then this morning I decided we'd go to South America.
South America?
So,
and were you 20 still, or 21 at this point?
No, I wasn't 21, I was 20.
20 still. And
So I left, he and I left and caught rides to New York City.
And when you say caught rides,
Middle of December.
That's hitchhiking?
Hitchhike.
How'd you hitchhike back then?
Terrible.
Did you put your thumb out? Is that how you do it? Or?
That's what you did. Sometimes they'd let you ride. One time a fellow would let us in until he searched us.
Oh, really?
And one night we went to, I forget what town it was, we went to jail, and they let us sleep in the jail.
Wow.
We got to New York, and finally got to New York. We stopped in Asheville, North Carolina for Christmas. I knew a girl that lived right outside of Asheville, and she invited us to come out and have Christmas dinner with the family. We stayed a couple of days there.
Huh.
Then we caught rides on into New York.
And the whole way was hitchhiking?
That's right, all the way.
Wow.
So,
Yep.
but finally, I rode from Princeton, New Jersey on into New York on the bus.
Uh-huh.
And I had $40 in traveler's checks in my inside coat pocket. And I sat between two black people, two niggers.
Uh-huh.
And when I got off the bus at the Pennsylvania station in New York, I went in to call these boys and reached in my pocket, and my money was, my two traveler's checks were gone.
Oh, no. Had you fallen asleep, or?
So they got them from me.
Oh, boy.
So we had a terrible time there in New York, and finally I got a job. We were trying to get jobs, and one day on Christmas Eve, we went into this building in New York where Pan American Petroleum Corporation had their office. And we went to their office, and of course, no one was there. In the city now, where the secretary general are, no one was there. So we sat down and waited for someone, and about 10 to 15 minutes, a fella came out, and he said, "What are you fellas doing?" And I said, "We're trying to get a job." He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Texas." He said, "Do you have your applications on file?" I said, "No." He said, "You mean you came up here without an application on file looking for a job?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, just a minute. I'll be back in a few minutes." So he left and walked back in the back room and called us. He said, "Come on back here." Asked me my name, and there's other boy's name, Homer Pittman.
Homer Pittman.
Pittman.
Uh-huh.
P-I-double-T-M-A-N. We went in this room, the fellow was sitting behind the desk, and he introduced us to him. His name was, as I remember, his name was Watson or Walker, or something like Watson. And he said, "Sit down." And he said, "They tell me you're from the Rio Grande Valley." I said, "Yes." He said, "You're trying to get a job to go to South America?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You know anybody down there?" I said, "Nearly everybody. I've lived there all my life."
In South America?
No, in the valley.
Oh, in the valley,
in South
yeah.
Texas. And he said, "Well, do you know a man named John Lomax?" I said, "Quite well." I said, I dated his daughter, and I ran a cotton gin one summer for Mr. Lomax. He said, "Do you think he'd recommend you for a job?" I said, "I think he would if you'd call him." He said, "Go outside and sit down a few minutes." So we went outside and sat down, and a little while called us back in. He said, "I've just talked to Mr. Lomax, and he said he's going to call your daddy and tell him that you're in New York." And he said, "I'm going to give you two boys a job. You're going to be timekeepers, and I'm going to send you up to Portland, Maine, where the boat's going to go out of, and you're going to go down there, and you'll make $175 a month plus board and room, and of which $75 has to be put in a bank here in the States for you.
Huh.
You have an 18-month contract."
Was that a lot of money back then?
Oh yes, in 1929.
Wow.
A lot of money.
Uh-huh.
And then he told me why he let me give us a job. He told me that he had been an alcoholic, and that he ended up in the Rio Grande Valley, and John Lomax gave him a job,
Huh.
sobered him up, and helped him get straightened out.
Wow.
And he had gotten various jobs and worked with the company. He had a real good job. That was a big job, in charge of personnel for a company like Pan American.
Huh.
So that's the way we happened to get the job. Otherwise, I'm sure we wouldn't have gotten it.
Did you spend the next 18 months then with Pan America?
A little longer than that in the valley, down in Aruba.
And did you you went out of Maine then?
Yeah, we went up to Portland, Maine, and on a boat about 7 days. I had my 21st birthday while we were on the boat.
Huh.
And we went down to Aruba, and I was there, 23 or 4 months. And we came back to the States and went to law school.
So you did go down to South America?
Oh, yeah.
And how long were you down there?
About 23 or 4 months.
Wow. And then when you came back, did you come back to New York City again?
Yeah, I came back to New York.
And then what were your thoughts then? You left New York pretty quick? Or?
Yeah, well, we only in New York a couple of days.
Uh-huh.
And a friend of mine, in the meantime, this boy had gone down with me. He left early. Gave up his job and came back to the States.
Huh.
But I finished a little more than my contract. Yeah.
And what did you do down there?
I for a while, I started out as being a timekeeper, but they put me in the yield department.
Uh-huh.
I had a real good job. I cleared all the ships. My job was to get all the papers ready for all the boats that came in, showing how much oil they took on and where it was going. And I'd take the crew lists and get them cleared by the British consul and get all the papers ready and give them money. If they wanted money, I'd go to the company office and get so much money for the captain, because some of those boats would go to Africa, some of them would go to South America, some of them would go all over the world with oil, you know. And I'd clear ships some days, no ships in, I had everything to do. Ships in, I had a lot to do.
Huh.
And lots of times I'd have to work at night, lots of times, but then sometimes I would do a lick all day long.
And what country was this?
Aruba, which was a Dutch island, right off the coast of Venezuela.
Wow. And did you stay there the whole time, or did you ever come back to the States?
No, I was there all the time, never left.
Did you ever write your folks or anything? Or?
Yeah, I corresponded once in a while with them.
Uh-huh. So they knew you.
Not very much.
They knew you ended up down there.
Yeah.
How many other children were there in your family?
I was the only child.
Really? And did your folks continue to live down the valley the rest of the
Yeah,
years?
they lived in the valley. And then when I got out of law school, I came back and went to law school.
Uh-huh.
And then I moved to the valley.
Oh, okay.
And
well, when you left New York, where did you go to at that point?
we came back. I went back to the valley to see my family.
Okay. And what year is this now?
This is a 1931, latter part of 1931.
Uh-huh. So you're 22, 23-ish?
Yeah. So then I went to law school and got out of law school in March, I guess it was, or April of 1933.
And what law school did you go to?
I went to Cumberland University
In
Cumberland, Tennessee.
And how did you get interested in going to law school?
Well, I had two uncles that were lawyers. One of them was a district judge at the time, and I thought maybe I'd enjoy it and like it. They said they thought I would, so that was probably one of the predominant reasons I did that.
And were they down in the valley? Or?
No, they lived up in East Texas.
Huh.
But one of my uncles had been district judge up there for 30 years.
Do you know what city he was in? Or?
Yeah, they were in Center, where I used to live.
Center?
Center, C-E-N-T-E-R.
I'm not. Where's that close to?
Well, Longview, you know where Longview is. Nacogdoches.
Okay.
Nacogdoches is in that judicial district. He was a district judge there. And of course, I went back when I went back to the valley and practiced in the valley.
Well, how did you get interested in Cumberland, or how did you end up there?
They had all gone to Cumberland.
Oh.
And my mother had an uncle of hers, two uncles of hers, as a matter of fact, had both gone to Cumberland in the 1860s.
Huh.
And
what did your parents do?
my father was a manager of a lumber yard.
All his life?
Uh-huh.
And did your mother, she work or she?
No, she never worked.
And so Cumberland, what city is that in?
Lebanon, Tennessee, about 25 miles out of Nashville.
And that's still a law school today?
Still there.
Did Texas have any law schools, do you know, back then?
Yeah.
Were
But
they?
you had to finish and get your BS before you could get in.
So you never finished your last couple of years of college? Did you finish your last 2 years?
No, I never did.
No. So you basically went 2 years of undergraduate, you said at SMU in Texas?
That's right.
And then were able to go right into law school?
Wow.
And how long was the law school program?
About 18 months.
Wow. And did you know anyone in Cumberland when you?
No, nobody.
Did you have a car or anything then?
No, I didn't have a car.
How did you folks take you back there, or you just hitch a ride?
No, I rode back with this friend of mine.
Okay.
And I had enough money saved up to go to school, but I didn't have enough money to buy a car and go to school both. So I decided I wouldn't buy a car, which I didn't.
So you went through all of law school without a car?
Uh-huh.
The money you saved, was that from working in South America?
That's right.
Did you put yourself through?
Yeah.
And do you remember what it cost back then? Was it expensive at the time, or?
No, very inexpensive. I'm not sure. I don't recall what the tuition was, but it wasn't $600 or $700 a year.
Uh-huh.
And your books. We buy secondhand books, and we had used the library, and I lived with a banker there who had, there were 4 boys that he let live there in his house, and we took our meals at a boarding house right up the street, and we 4 boys all lived there and went to school.
Do you remember anything from law school? Any course you enjoyed, or any professor you liked or didn't like, or anything?
I don't remember any particular professor. We had about 5 different professors.
That's all for the whole.
A couple of them were retired justices of the Tennessee Supreme Court. And but I don't remember the name of any of them.
Anything you remember about law school being called on, or doing any research project or anything?
Well, we did have to. We had to do a lot of case law, and we'd have to go to the library and have to dig out a lot of cases. Most of the work we had would be just contracts and evidence contracts. A little criminal law, not very much. And
but was it pretty tough back then?
no, I don't think so. I think if you went to school and listened, you could get along pretty well. And I had pretty good grades when I took the Texas bar. I had pretty good grades when I passed the bar.
Did you have to have a degree before you took the Texas bar? A law degree?
Yeah, you had to have a law degree.
And you said it was only 18 months. Did you go straight through or take any time off?
No, I didn't. Maybe one Christmas vacation was all. But I didn't spend that at home. I spent that in Asheville, North Carolina.
Did you keep in touch with some of your friends from?
Well, a few, yeah. The friends I made there in school, I had all my life. Most of them are dead now. But the boy that went to South America with me, he's dead. Been dead a long time.
Did he move back to Oklahoma, or?
Yeah, he moved back to, and went back to school and got his degree, and he was a engineer and worked for the U.S. Steel Company in Houston after that.
And so you graduated from law school. Do you remember what year it was, approximately?
33.
So you maybe 25 or so.
Yeah, 25. And no, I wasn't 25. I was about 23, 24.
Okay.
And I got out of law school. Then I had to go and I went back home and went in a lawyer's office.
Okay.
Just as a kind of a clerk like we have here for about 4 or 5 months, and then I went up and took the bar exam.
Did you always think when you were at Cumberland that you'd come back to Texas?
Yes, I did. I thought I'd come back to Rio Grande Valley.
Were there any other students there that intended to go to Texas, or was that kind of unique to go to school in Tennessee?
No, there are quite a few students there that lived in Texas. And G.T. Watts, who used to be the district attorney here, lived there. He was in law school the same time I was.
And where was he the district attorney?
In Roswell.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Died 10, 15 years ago. All the old timers here knew G.T.
What?
I knew him in law school.
What? How big was the law school back then?
They had about 750 students.
And you said it's still a law school
All
today?
men, all males, no women.
And you think there was just about 5 professors for the whole school?
Yeah.
Did most of your classes, were they taken with all the other students, or did you?
No, they were divided up in groups.
Did you specialize in anything, or did they not have that back then?
You didn't. No specialization at all.
And you didn't think of taking the Tennessee bar or anything?
No.
So you came back to South Texas, and what city did you live in?
I lived in Donna, D-O-N-N-A.
And where's that? Is that?
That's in Hidalgo County. About 10, 12 miles from McAllen. And something very interesting happened. I didn't have any money to buy law books with. My father had a lumber yard, and we took some 1x12 and 2x4s and just laid the boards out and held them up with 2x4s. And I knew all the lawyers down that country, and my father did too. And I went around to those lawyers, and I get all their old law books. and I put them on these shelves, and when these muckers would come in my office, they'd see those books, they'd say, "Oh, muchos libros, muchos libros, muy buen abogado, a lot of books, he's a good lawyer." That's really the truth, that too.
Did you know Spanish back then?
Oh yes, I spoke Spanish rather fluently.
And that was even before you left home?
Yeah, I knew that. Took it to school and then college.
And you still speak some today?
Yes, I know all the bad words.
And so when you went back, did you have a hard time finding a attorney to clerk with, or was that
No, a good friend of my father's, I clerked in his office. I was offered a job at $65 a month to go with the firm.
Uh-huh.
But I thought I could make more money by being by myself in this little town, because there's only one other lawyer there in a town of about 8,000 or 9,000 people.
Uh-huh.
So I went back to this little town.
Was that the right decision in hindsight?
Well, in hindsight, it was, yeah.
And what was the name of the attorney you clerked for?
Ulrich, Oliver Ulrich, A-L-D-R-I-C-H.
And he was older, I guess?
Yes, and had two men in his firm.
Uh-huh.
And then I was a clerk.
What was your first office like?
My first office, I had a desk, a set of statutes, and all those books that fool the Mexicans.
And what type of work did you start off doing?
The first case I ever had was a divorce for a friend of mine.
Uh-huh.
He'd waited until I got my license before he got the divorce.
Oh, really?
6 or 7 months. And then after that, I did general civil work and all. I represented the bank.
Uh-huh.
They gave me my rent free to represent the bank.
Huh. And so as soon as you got
I did my own typing.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
No support staff, no secretary? Or?
No, later on, after I got started, I had a secretary.
You took the bar exam then, were you still about 23, 24-ish?
About 23, 24, yeah.
And where did you take the bar exam?
I took it in Austin.
And so that was a little bit of a trip up there?
Oh yeah, Texas State Bar.
And was that the only place they offered it, do you know? Or?
Yeah, they only offered it, I believe they offered it, twice a year.
Uh-huh.
And you had to have an average score. You could have no score lower than 70.
Uh-huh.
And you had to have an average score of 75. And my average score was about 87, but I had a 69 in equity.
Oh, no.
And the fellow that taught equity was a fellow named Stringer.
Uh-huh.
Judge Stringer. He was a member of a big firm of lawyers in Waco,
Uh-huh.
Texas. I never will forget him.
Huh.
And I had all my other papers, showing what my grades were.
Uh-huh.
It was rather odd when the minimum was 70 and here was one that's 69.
Oh, boy.
So I took my papers and went over to see Judge Stringer. This was after we had taken the exam, before they'd all left or anything. And I told him, I said, I worked pretty hard for this, and I said, all my grades have been good except in this one equity course I got 69. And he said, well, let me see your papers. So he looked at it, just scratched out to 69, put on 73 or 74, I forget which it was. Then he gave it to me, he said, you know what, we just got too many lawyers. We've got to cut down on so many lawyers. So anyway, I had good grades otherwise, so I got my license.
What was involved in taking the bar exam back then?
It took about, I recall, 2 days.
Uh-huh. Was it essay or multiple choice? Or?
No, they would you'd go in and you'd take, say, equity.
Uh-huh.
They'd give you all the questions, and then you just write down the answers.
Was that a short answer then?
Short answers.
And
that's where they did all the courses. They had equity and evidence, civil law, that's what all else. I forget what all.
probably contracts.
Divided up into different evidence, all types of case of subjects,
Uh-huh.
And there was generally, I think, about 5 men on that bar examination group. I think it's the same thing now in Texas. I don't think it's been changed.
They didn't have any national tests then back then?
No, none at all.
And do you remember how many people took the exam?
Oh yeah, there's way over 100 that took it when I did.
But that was for the whole state.
Yeah.
So the whole state of Texas took it in Austin, and there was over 100 that took it. And do you remember what the passage rate was?
No, I don't have any idea about it.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know any of the, I didn't know any of the fellows that took it with me.
Was it hard to study for the bar exam?
It was, it really was, because you didn't know what they were going to ask. You had no idea. They didn't give you any printed material of any kind. You just went up cold, and there's some cram courses that you could subscribe to that were supposed to help you. But I didn't take any of those because I didn't have any money to take them with. But some boys could go up there, and they had some cram courses. They'd go in and give them a cram course for 4 or 5 days. And that's supposed to kind of become, and I think it was probably very helpful to a lot of fellows.
And did you stop working for a while then while you studied, or did you study in the evenings?
No, I would study when I was up and work for Judge Ulrich, because I had a lot of spare time. They didn't keep me busy all the time because they had a pretty nice library that I could use. And so I had a fairly good idea from boys that had been to school up there and taken the course, what generally speaking, what they would ask.
Do you remember what you were paid when you clerked for the judge?
$60
per
month.
Wow. And that was probably a lot of money back then?
Oh yes, and I drove back and forth every day, 17 miles.
17 miles each way?
17.
70 or 17?
17.
17. And and you worked what, Monday through Friday?
Yeah.
And when you took the bar exam, then you said you took your paper to one of the graders, to Stringer?
Yeah.
How did you know to take it to him? Did they?
Well, I knew he's the one that taught equity. He's the one that gave the equity exams.
Did they tell you that these?
Oh yes,
scores?
we knew that. We'd go in the room, and the examiner would be there, and he'd pass out the papers, the questionnaires. You see, he'd pass them out, so you knew who he was.
But after you took it, did they grade them right then, or?
Well, I think it was the next day. It was a pretty short deal, because I think we took them over a period of 2 days, I believe. If I recall, it was 2 days. And I probably had equity the first day, because after we got through all, that same day, late that afternoon or the next morning, they gave us our grades.
On all the scores? And so you knew...
They didn't waste any time grading them.
So you knew the day after you finished the exam how you'd done. And so if he'd not changed that 69, you couldn't have been licensed?
No, I wouldn't have got my license. We had to change the 69 to 70.
And was that, do you know if that was common for...
Oh, I'm sure it was, because my grade was about 85 to 87.
As an average?
A pretty good grade.
Wow.
So, average, but whenever he told me that, he says, we just got too damn many lawyers.
So you think he may have been trying to weed out?
That gave it away so far as I was concerned.
And so you still remember going up and talking to him? And then how long after that did you get licensed in Texas?
Well, I got my license within 30 days after we took the exam.
And what was involved in getting your license?
Nothing. They turned the papers over. The scores were given us, and then we filed an application for a license. And I think a license cost $10 or $20. And they issued you a license. The Secretary of State did. I guess it was Secretary of State. I've got one in the office. I don't remember who issued it.
And did they just mail it to you, or did you have
mailed it to us?
You didn't have to go up here and raise your right hand? And so,
that was it.
And so at that point you had your license, and you probably hung it on your wall there?
Very proud of it.
Oh, yeah. And what did you do then with your practice? How did you set up, and where were you at?
I was in Donna, and I was on the second story of the bank building there. And I had 2 or 3, all the rooms I wanted, but I was the only tenant up there. And I had a kind of a waiting room. And then I had my office, and that's where I had all my books, my typewriter, and that thing.
Did you have any secretary then when you got licensed?
No.
Later
on, I had a secretary after I'd been there about a year and a half. I did fairly well, and I hired a secretary. I think she made $75 a month or something like that.
Wow. And what do you remember? I guess your income increased as you worked, or?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember?
It did. And we did lots of title work.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the main things we did was title work.
And you had those other attorneys available to consult with?
If I needed them, yeah.
Did you, how did you advertise, or how did you get clients to come in and such?
Well, we did that. You did that. I never did advertise anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
You just put a
I
sign up?
belonged, well, of course, I belonged to the county bar when I had my license. We had a county bar association,
Uh-huh.
and I joined that. Of course, I belonged to the Texas bar, you see,
Uh-huh.
and I still do.
Uh-huh.
And I belonged to the county bar association. Well, of course, then the lawyers that I didn't know, I got to meet. But I knew most of the lawyers because my family, we all lived there so long.
And as far as getting clients to come in, then did you just basically sit and wait for them to come to you?
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, we didn't do any type of advertising, anything like that. But I built up a pretty nice practice there. I got most of the practice that there was in the town.
Huh.
And it was all kind, not very much criminal work at the time, mostly civil.
Uh-huh.
But then I did do some little criminal work.
And how many years were you there then?
I was there until 1944.
So maybe
That's
11
11
years?
years, about 11 years.
And the whole time were you on your own?
No, I went to the district attorney's office and worked there about 18 months, and then at election I was district attorney one term, and then I got married,
Uh-huh.
and then we left, and I went back to Donna for a short time, and then our home burned, and then we decided to come out here. The war was on at the time, and I was 38 years old, and subject to the draft,
Uh-huh.
and had taken the exam, physical exam,
Uh-huh.
and I was subject to being called up to the Marine Corps,
Uh-huh.
and I brought Dora, my wife, and
Uh-huh.
Dora Lee and Leland, I brought them out here to Ruidoso
Uh-huh.
In the summer.
But when you were still in Texas there, were you with the district attorney's office? Was that towards the end of your time?
Yeah.
So how long were you a private attorney?
About 7 years down there, 7 or 8 years there.
And then you said you were elected district attorney?
Yeah.
And that was 100% criminal then?
Yeah.
And which did you like better back then?
What?
The criminal versus the
Well,
the civil?
I like the criminal because we got to call all the shots,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Uh-huh.
And we had a very efficient office. It was very interesting work. No real bad crimes, a few killings, and all, mostly misdemeanors.
Uh-huh.
Stuff that didn't, once in a while you get a drug deal or something like that, but not very often.
What was your favorite type of work to do before you went on with the district attorney's office?
Title work.
Title work. And did you do quite a bit of that?
Lots of it, because the area was growing and lots of land being sold and exchanged and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And so I did quite lots of title work, a lot of contract work.
Did you ever think of hooking up with somebody else when you were in the civil practice then?
No, I didn't. No, I was pretty well satisfied because I was my own boss,
Uh-huh.
and I had a pretty good practice. I guess I was making $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year, which was a lot of money then.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't need anybody. Then I could kind of regulate my life and do what I wanted to do.
Uh-huh. With the district attorney's office, was that a pay raise?
Oh yes,
Really?
I think I got $150 a month in the district attorney's office.
But okay, so you're district attorney and you also were doing the civil practice
No practice, no outside work at all.
when you were district attorney?
Yes,
And you had to be elected to that.
yeah.
Do you remember, was it a tough campaign or?
No, it's all fixed.
Uh-huh. And how's it fixed?
Well, the politics down there are fixed. It used to be.
Uh-huh.
And you only had I was the only candidate, no other candidate.
Uh-huh. And what, when you were on your own with your private practice, what was the name of your firm?
Just T.T. Sanders Jr.
Uh-huh. And what caused you to leave the Valley then?
We left on account of my thinking I was going to be inducted into the Marine Corps.
And why was that?
Well, Dora's father and mother lived in Roswell,
Uh-huh.
and I brought them out here. Our home had burned.
And how did that happen?
It caught fire.
I mean, what was it? Did you ever know why? Was it electrical or?
No, it was a stove. Dora's father and mother were in the valley on Christmas, and she was doing some cooking on a gas stove, and we went to picture show, and she had some pork that she was cooking, in the aluminum utensil, and the gas it boiled dry, and the aluminum utensil melted, and when it did, the caught on fire, the fat and all caught on fire, and it went right up the back of the stove and went up into the attic of the house, and the fire had some ventilators up there, and the fire spread through the attic. Instead of burning like an ordinary fire, it burned down. The house had 10-foot ceilings in it, and when they put the fire out, why everything was pretty badly damaged and all, you know. But we were able to go in there, and my father was able to get fellows to go in there, and we cut those ceilings down to 8-foot ceilings instead of 10. So all we needed to do was to re-roof, in effect, cut it down and re-roof the house, which we did. And we stayed there until we got ready to leave. And
Did you come home then from the, you said you went to a show or something?
yeah.
You came home and found the house on fire? Wow.
On New Year's Eve, New Year's Day.
Wow. Do you remember what year that was?
1940, I believe it was 1943, if I'm not mistaken.
So you fixed it back up a little bit before you moved on. Now, why was it beneficial to move out of South Texas at the time? You said to avoid
because I was going to be inducted. I'd been notified I'd be called into the. They were going to call me up. They thought in August or September. The draft board had notified me. So I wanted Dora and Doralee to be somewhere out here.
Right.
Because the Lewises had a cabin in Ruidoso. So a lot up there.
So you're trying to move her back closer to her family.
That's right. That's where she wanted to be. So we came out here and then bought a lot and built a cabin up there, which we still have.
And where was that in Ruidoso?
On the river up above Ruidoso.
And you never got selected or never got inducted?
No. Then they called me and told me that I was too old, and that was in the fall of, I guess, 1943.
43?
43 or 44, maybe it was 44.
44 probably.
I guess it was. They called me and said that, well, you're past 38, and said you're too old to go in the Marines, and if we need you, we'll call you. So in the meantime, we built this cabin in Ruidoso. And then I met Harold Hurd, old man Harold Hurd, who was practicing by himself here at the time.
In Roswell.
Pete Hurd's father.
And when you left Texas, then did you not finish your term as district attorney?
Oh, it was over. I'd already served my term.
It was just a year and a half.
I was back in Donna at the time. I'd gone back to Donna. And then I met old man Harold Hurd out here. And he said that he'd like for me to come down here and work with him. So we came down to Roswell and rented a place. And I went up there and kind of clerked for old man Hurd for a while. And then we never did have a partnership, but we had a working agreement. And I paid half of the secretary's fees and half the rent. And I had my own practice, what I could dig up and what I could get.
How long were you in Ruidoso then?
Oh, we were only there about 5 months, 4 or 5 months.
So when did you move to Roswell approximately?
I believe it was in the fall of 1944.
Okay. And then you shared office space with Mr. Hurd?
In the meantime, I went on in the bar here on motion.
So you didn't have to take the New Mexico bar exam?
I didn't have to.
How long, did you have any waiting period before you got licensed?
No, I didn't. There was no waiting period at the time.
And what was involved in a motion? Was it a letter, or did you have to
you had to be introduced to the Supreme Court by a member of the bar in good standing.
And how would they introduce it? Would they
you just, well, when the Supreme Court was in session,
Uh-huh.
why, you filed your application and then notified they're gonna be in session on such and such a day.
Uh-huh.
And then some member of the bar would go with you to the court. A fellow lawyer by the name of George Hamilton, who lived in Santa Fe,
Uh-huh.
and whom I had met, was president of the bar, I believe, at the time. And he introduced me to the court.
And was this would have been, was that 1945?
I'm not sure, Rick, I used 44 or 45.
Okay. And so did you know this Hamilton before that, or you just go up and visit
No, I
with
met him here.
in Roswell?
No, I'm in Santa Fe.
In Santa Fe?
He lived in Santa Fe.
And how many justices were there in the Supreme Court, or do you remember?
5 at the time.
5. And do you remember who they were, or who some of them were? Or?
Yeah, one of them was Judge Bryce,
Uh-huh.
Roswell,
Uh-huh.
C.R. Bryce.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to remember who else was on the court at the time. I believe that, I just don't remember, Rick,
Uh-huh.
who the other justices were.
And they all, so you went before the 5 of them in session,
And then
and Mr. Hamilton,
he just introduced me to the court, told the court who I was,
uh-huh,
where I lived, how long I'd been here,
uh-huh,
what I had done previously,
uh-huh.
and that was the end of it.
And they didn't ask any questions or anything?
No,
And were you by yourself, or were there some others that were?
no, I was there by myself.
Okay, so you were licensed at that point, and they gave you probably a certificate?
Yeah,
And did you come back then with Mr. Hurd?
I came back to Mr. Hurd.
And how long did you share some space with him?
Well, I shared space with him about a year and a half, I guess, and then he retired.
Uh-huh.
And I continued to carry on up there, same space, same secretary he had, and I bought his library. A lot of those books we have are those books leather bound, are books that I got from Mount Hurd.
Wow. And where were you located at then?
3rd floor of the White Building,
The 3rd floor of J.P. White
on the
Building?
west end.
Did it have windows back then?
Yeah, big windows.
Uh-huh.
Big
And,
windows.
and what was your office like then? Was it?
Well, it had 2 offices. That one was, very much like, well, you were with us when we were in the
Second
down
floor.
the 2nd floor.
Uh-huh.
About the same size as those offices there.
Uh-huh.
And that steel table we had, I
Uh-huh.
got from the bank. And in order to get it in, we had to tear out one of the windows up there in that deal to get that table.
That's the table we still have in the
Yeah,
library.
we still
now.
have that table. That's why you still have the library.
Now, was Mr. Hurd, was he related to Peter Hurd?
Father.
He's his father.
Mhm.
And so when he retired and you bought his library, you were on your own then?
Yeah.
And what type of work were you doing?
Civil work.
Just general civil?
No criminal work
Uh-huh.
at all. And I did that when I first came here. I didn't do any criminal work at all out here.
Uh-huh. Your whole career?
Once or twice I was appointed. Judge McGee appointed me 2 or 3 times on criminal matters, but to go out and solicit or actively do criminal work, I didn't do it.
Uh-huh. How big was the district back then? And how many judges were there down
Well,
there?
there was only I don't think there was but one judge.
Uh-huh.
We had a judge here, Judge McGee, and I think he was the only judge for this whole district, Lee, Travis, and Eddy County.
So he just traveled some, or?
Yes, he'd go from one place to another.
Huh. Do you remember about what you were making back then?
Here, you mean?
Yeah,
When I was, well, I was just looking not too long ago one year. Sim Christie and I took a salary of $250 a month, and the year we ended up and had to report and divide up about $6,000.
Huh.
A little over, I think $6,900. I happened to find that
And that,
a long time ago.
yeah, that would have been back in the 40s,
Yeah,
and that was a lot back then.
it sure was. We had a pretty good living. And Sim had just gotten out of law school
Uh-huh.
and married, and they lived on North Montana.
And what year was that? Do you remember?
It
how
must
long?
have been 47, around 48,
Uh-huh.
maybe 48.
Huh.
And Sim had just gotten out of law school and was married, and he worked up there with me for about a year and a half, and then he got a chance to do oil and gas work, which he wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
We didn't have any oil and gas practice. The Hinkle firm had most of that, and that would firm, because they'd been a long time, old firms here.
So he shared
And
space.
they offered him a job doing nothing but oil and gas work with the Hinkle firm.
Ah.
And he asked me, and I said, take it.
Uh-huh.
So he did.
And,
So that's,
but before he did that, you and he just shared space.
yeah.
Do you remember what you
No,
built?
no, it was Sanders and Christie, Sanders and Christie.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you had your own firm.
Yeah.
And do you remember what you billed your time at back then? Hourly rate?
No, we didn't bill it on an hourly basis. It was on a, never did bill it on an hourly basis, on a job.
And how would you determine what to charge?
Well, depending on how large, or for example, abstracts, minimum about $25 to about $50 would be a big fee on abstracts.
And did you do any trial work back then?
Yeah, began to do quite a lot of trial work. I had a fellow that I'd known in the valley was transferred to El Paso, was the claims manager for a Maryland casualty company.
Uh-huh.
So he gave me all the Maryland casualty business here. And we did quite a little defense work.
And that's what became USF&G?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Maryland casualty, yeah. Matter of fact, they were absorbed by General American.
General America, okay.
And then I happened to do one case with USF&G medical named Jim Lons, who was their district manager.
Uh-huh.
And he became a very good friend of mine, and he gave me the USF&G account, and we've had it ever since then.
Do you remember what year that was approximately?
Oh, I would say probably about 1950.
Huh. And back then, what was it like in Roswell practicing law? Were there very many attorneys around? Or?
Yes, we had about, I guess, maybe 20, not over 20. There were about 5 in the Hinkle firm and about 4 or 5 in the Malone firm.
Uh-huh.
Maybe 6 in the Hinkle firm.
Uh-huh.
And then there were quite a few solo practitioners
Uh-huh.
here and down.
Do you remember?
I don't believe we had over 20 lawyers total. We had a very active bar. Jim Jennings was practicing here at the time.
Uh-huh.
He was by himself. Bunker came here and went with the Hinkle firm while I was here. Bill Bonder came here and went with the Hinkle firm while I was here. Paul Steve was practicing by himself,
Huh.
I remember. And I'm just trying to think who else, some of the other lawyers. Askren, he's dead, of course. He was a very well-known criminal lawyer here. And Lou Fullen was another well-known criminal lawyer here, old-timers. And of course, old man Hurd had been here for many years. He's as old as any of them, you know.
Are there any stories you remember from your early days in Chaves County here? Any cases you had or any exchanges with the judge that stick out in your memory?
No, I don't remember anything. We used to have a pretty active bar association.
Uh-huh.
And we get together and have some pretty good times. Got a little drinking and so forth. G.T. Watts, this boy that I had known in law school,
Uh-huh.
was a district attorney here.
Uh-huh.
And old Judge McGee was from Texas. He had practiced law, I think, in Houston, Texas. And my being a Texan was a great help to me
Uh-huh.
because he liked me because of that.
Uh-huh.
And you know, I used to fish with him. However, I don't think he ever did me any favors. He kind of called them like he saw them.
Do you remember when, did you practice on your own then, except for with Christie till the
Yeah,
time?
then Bruin came.
Uh-huh.
Bruin got out of law school, and he came.
Did you know him before he got out of law school?
Yes, I met him. I think I met him maybe one summer
Uh-huh.
before he got out of law school.
And did you visit with him then about him coming back to Roswell?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. Well, about when he came back to see if there's anything he could do.
Uh-huh.
Now, Christie had been gone maybe 8 or 9 months, maybe a year when Jim got out, I guess. I don't remember the exact year when Jim, but I'd say it was about 1947 or 48,
Uh-huh.
along there when Jim got out of law school. I just don't remember what year it was.
Yeah, I was thinking, I may be wrong, I was thinking it was early 50s, but
It may have been.
And he, how did you decide to hook up with him?
Well, I had I had pretty good practice, and he was looking for somebody to work for and with. He came in the office, and of course we weren't partners at the time. He worked for me for I don't know how long, and then we entered into a partnership.
And it was
never had any written agreement of any kind.
It was Sanders and Bruin.
Mm-hmm.
And what type of practice were you doing then?
We did civil, all civil.
And back then, did you still just bill by the job?
Oh yeah. I never have, not even till now. I don't charge by the hour.
Your whole career?
I never have charged by the hour. And in those old days, I don't think that anyone else did.
Really?
That came on later, I think.
How long was McGee around?
He was then, well, he went on the Supreme Court and died, I believe, while he was on the court, right after he got off. I think he was on the Supreme Court about 8 years. He was here about 3 or 4 years after I came here.
Do you remember who replaced him as judge? Or who some of those early judges were?
Caswell Neal was one of them. And Judge McGee and Caswell Neal and Paul Sneed. Paul was the judge for a while. And George Reese. He's the best judge I ever practiced before, I always thought. And Kermit Nash, judge, became a district judge over in Lee County. And I'm trying to remember who the judge was up in Lincoln County. I've forgotten his name. But there was a lot of camaraderie between the lawyers and the judge in those days. It was not formal. We didn't have enough work, no one had enough work to keep you busy all the time. And the judge's wife, they're very friendly. You could go sit down and talk to them, not about cases, but just, then I used to go fishing with Judge McGee a lot. He's quite a fisherman. Old Judge Bryce was here, see. He had been on the Supreme Court. Matter of fact, he was on the Supreme Court, not when I was admitted to the bar, but right after I was admitted to the bar. He went on the Supreme Court. And then he came back to Roswell after he'd been on the court and practiced, opened his office and practiced law. Did a few things, not very many, in the same building there with us.
But most of these attorneys, were they full-time attorneys, or did they do other work also?
No, most of them were full-time. Paul Sneed was, Paul was there, and I'm trying to remember who he was with. I think an old boy named Ray Phelps, who's still around. I think at one time he practiced with Paul Sneed.
Really? And Dick Bean, he's been around.
Dick Bean was here. And he and Sneed were the partners at one time. Bean and Sneed. Dick. And Dick's father had been sheriff here. Oh, he was an old timer, born and raised here.
So when Mr. Bruin came on, you had plenty of work to do and needed some help.
We had nice, pretty good practice. We did pretty well, and I think Bruin, and if I remember correctly, I don't remember whether he drew a salary and how we handled that. I think at the beginning, I think he drew a salary and a percentage of the profits at the end of the year. But I don't think it was 50-50 to begin with. We'll have to ask Jim. I don't remember. It's been so long ago.
And how were you set up? Were you still on the 3rd floor of the J.P. White building? And did you add some space there?
Oh yeah, we did. We added 1 or 2 more rooms. That'd be on the east side where we were when you came with us.
Okay.
And we had that the in room was a reception room. Then we had a room on each side of it, as I recall.
And did you have very many secretaries or support
we
staff?
We had one. Well, at that time we had 2 secretaries. I had one, and Jim had one.
And then did you have someone who answered the phone too, or it's just the 2?
No. Well, the girls would answer the phone.
What type of equipment did they have back then?
we used typewriters and mimeographing equipment to do. You see, when you had to make all your pleadings, your copies, you'd use a mimeograph. You'd cut them on a wax tape deal, and then you'd turn around, run through a machine, and make your mimeograph copies.
Huh. And how was that when you'd spin around by hand?
Done by hand.
Kind of a circular machine?
Yeah, right.
Huh. And you'd file the original with the court?
Yeah. Sometimes you get a girl that was real good. If you didn't have too many copies, a lot of girls, some of the girls could make an original in 4, or sometimes an original in 5.
By typing each one?
By typing.
Uh-huh.
So she'd have it, if she could make as many as an original in 4, that's all you needed. But sometimes, where you had a lot of defendants and all, you maybe need to make more than that. When we did, we'd always use mimeograph machines, mimeograph.
Do you remember any cases back around that time when Mr. Bruin came out, or anything that jumps out in your mind where you had a court hearing or any type of case that?
Oh, I had it was Ross Malone. I had a damage case one time. A fella in here was out playing golf, and he hit a boy by the name of Allison in the head with a golf ball.
Oh, no.
He had a brain concussion.
Oh, boy.
And I brought suit for the Allison boy against Al Raby, who has a Dodge dealership here, used to have, I guess your son has it now. Sued Al for damages caused by this concussion this boy suffered. And we tried it over here in court. And the question arose as to the proper etiquette in connection with handling a golf bag after you have shot the ball and hold out, as they call it. What are you supposed to do? And this boy had put the flag back in the hole, but he had left his bag of ball, his golf bag right on the back side of the green. He hadn't removed it. And but he put the flag in the hole, and Raby had hit the ball, and the ball hit this boy. And our defense, our claim was it made no difference, as long as that he should never have shot the ball, hit the ball, as long as the ball was on the green or anywhere around it. And his argument was that the minute you put the flag back in the hole, then the bag should never, in the first instance, have been left on the shoulders of the green. It should have been off the green entirely, the bag. And if you'll notice, you never do see a golf bag or a caddy on the green with the balls.
And did that go to a trial?
Went to jury trial. And tried it before Judge Harris. George Harris was the judge. No, the judge was Fettinger, George Fettinger from Alamogordo.
The father of the current attorney?
No, he was a judge until just a short time ago. Retired.
So George Fettinger used to be a judge?
Yeah. And the jury was out. And it was about 8 o'clock at night. I didn't have any idea what the jury's going to do. Ross Malone called me and said, I sure would like to settle this thing if we could, Truman. He said, we'll give you $22,000. Settle it. And the jury had been out quite a little while, three or four hours. And I thought maybe I ought to take it. So I called the daddy of this boy and told him. He said, well, I think we ought to get more money than that. I said, well, the jury had been out quite a while. And I'm a little worried for fear that we may not get anything. And I think we ought to take it. He said, well, go ahead and take it. So I called Ross back and said, it's the deal. And he said, that's fine. So we told the judge, and the judge called the jury in and dismissed the jury. And it turned out they were 11-1 for acquittal.
Wow.
For the defendant.
Wow. So that was a very smart
I was on my way, and I just didn't know it. But that is the only agreement Ross and I had. Of course, we got the check and got the money. The boy never recovered.
Oh, boy.
He still was terrible.
And that was a lot of money.
yeah, there was quite a lot of money in those days, but the boy, they sent him to, been all over, people were well-to-do, right? And his father has on state corporation commission. And they sent him everywhere in an effort to see if they could do anything for him, but nothing ever was any good.
Huh. Do you remember what Mr. Bruin was like coming right out of law school? How would you describe him, or?
No, Bruin was always Bruin, you know. He's never changed any since I've known him. He's just as hard-headed now as he was then. But Jim was always a hard worker. Sure.
And y'all got along real?
Never did. I don't think Jim and I ever had a real hard, serious argument.
And then how did you decide to add again after it was Sanders and Bruin?
Well, I'm just trying to remember. I guess the next one we got in was Chuck Call.
Well, I think Bobby.
Oh yeah, Bobby. That's right.
I was thinking he came in the early '60s. Maybe
I think that's right.
63 or so.
I'm trying to remember how Bobby came down here. His wife was a Roswell girl. And I think we hired Bob, if I recall correctly, to work on a salary when he first came in. And then we made him a partner and put his name on the letterhead. And then I think that it was through Bobby that we got Chuck. Because he and Chuck were good friends.
And did you? Do you remember how you hooked up with Bobby? Was he looking for a job, or did you have more work than you can handle?
We had quite a little work, plenty of work, and he was looking for a job. And I think Bob came in. I think he was on a salary, if I'm not mistaken.
Which means
I don't remember how long, but then he became a partner.
When you say on a salary,
and I'm trying to remember how we finally ended up. When we finally ended up with that deal, I sold out to those guys, but I don't remember exactly. I think I had about 40% or 45% when I sold out to them. And then I had my American Bar retirement deal, which was, I forget what it was, $7,500,000. And I sold out for them for practically nothing, if I remember correctly. Not very much, very little.
Do you remember what Bobby was like when he first came on? Do you have any memories of him as a young attorney?
No. Bob was a hard worker, you know. And he and Chuck were real close friends. Bob, they lived down on, let's see, North Garden, if I remember correctly. And we used to go to Bobby's a lot, visit him over there. I didn't know his father and mother. They came here to visit, but Bobby made a lot of friends, and but he was very studious. We didn't. Bobby was. I didn't think he was as religious then as he became a little later on. He got to be very religious, and I guess he still is. But he wasn't at that time. If I recall, he wasn't very religious. But we just did general civil work, and we represented the building and loan, helped the building and loan account, Roswell building and loan account.
What bank is that now?
That's the Pioneer Savings now.
Okay.
And then I got quite a part of the work at the bank. And my father-in-law was on the board of the bank, and I got part of the First National work. I never did get it all.
That's United New Mexico now.
No, because Clarence Hinkle was on the board. His father was president of the bank, and they were the bank's counsel, but I got quite a little work from the bank.
Where were you located then?
Still the white building, same in.
Third floor.
Same place.
And do you remember, were you adding secretaries too, or did you?
Yeah, we'd added a couple more secretaries. And then, I guess it was after that we moved downstairs, and that's when Worley came in, if I remember correctly. I don't think Mike was ever upstairs.
On the third floor.
I think he was on the second floor.
So Chuck, do you remember what led to Chuck coming on?
Well, mostly Bobby, I think. I think we had room for him, and he came in. And I think he worked on the salary too. I
Uh-huh.
think they all did,
Uh-huh.
starting out. And, well, matter of fact, it was Sanders, Bruin, and Baldock. The call name never did come in until we moved, until I left, and they
Uh-huh.
changed it.
And then, do you remember, were you one of the managing partners, or did you, I mean, do you remember business meetings with Jim Bruin and Bobby Baldock and such throughout the years there before you brought Mike on?
Oh yes. Well, we had a pretty substantial practice
Uh-huh.
back there then, because we did quite a little all the USF&G work, and then we were still doing all the work for Earl and Casualty Company, who had quite a little work. Did quite a little work for let me think of the name of this company up in Spokane, Washington. I forget what the name.
An insurance company, or?
A big insurance company.
Uh-huh.
Yep, real good. And we did their work, but then they got to where they wanted us to go in and take depositions, and then asked the reporter not to transcribe them.
Uh-huh.
We would then take notes of the depositions, and we'd make a report to them, and they would then decide whether or not they wanted the depositions transcribed. We wouldn't agree to do that.
Uh-huh.
We lost the account.
Was that American General? Or
No,
something like
American
that?
General was out of Houston.
Oh, okay.
But I'm trying to remember the name, because they were a big outfit, a big company out of their main office was out in Seattle.
Huh.
But we lost that account, and then we did. There's a casualty company called Fidelity, I believe, out of Dallas. We did quite a little work for them.
Uh-huh.
But USF&G and Maryland Casualty Company back in those days had a very active agents here, and we had quite a little business. They kept us pretty busy.
Uh-huh. Do you remember what led to bringing Mike on? Do you remember any of those discussions, or did you need some help back then?
I think it's a question of needing more help.
Uh-huh. So through the years, you just kept getting...
I was doing less and less, really.
Uh-huh.
I had a lot of outside interests. I had a ranch, had a bunch of some farms, and had a partnership.
Uh-huh.
I was there most of the time, but I didn't do a great deal of the work. Really.
Uh-huh. So you weren't really full-time as an attorney?
No, we were going a lot. I took a whole bunch of trips. Dora and I, one time, we spent 4 months going around South America.
Uh-huh.
Then we went to Asia, New Zealand, all over there for one time. We gone about 3 months.
Uh-huh.
And we took nice long vacations and all.
Uh-huh.
And the boys, at the time, they didn't seem to mind it very much.
Uh-huh. What type of work were you doing then through the years?
Frankly, all civil.
Mostly all defense?
I don't remember that we ever did any. Well, we did. Of course, you'd always had your divorces and that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think we ever did any criminal work unless we were appointed by the court to ever do it.
Uh-huh. Did you, was it mostly defense work, defending, as opposed to, did you pursue very many personal injuries?
Mostly defense work, not very much plaintiff's work.
Uh-huh.
Mostly defense, because we represented those insurance companies, you see, and we felt they were better paid. And in those days, most of the work you had would be workman's compensation.
Uh-huh.
And there wasn't much fee deal in workman's compensation back in those days, not like it is now.
Uh-huh. Very
seldom do you have any personal injury cases that amounted to very much. No, we didn't have big verdicts and that sort of thing, as I remember.
And did you still just build the insurance companies based on the job, pretty much?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah. I think about the time Mike was there, that we may have started billing about by the hour about that time.
Uh-huh.
But I never did bill by the hour. The boys, I'm sure, did. But I just couldn't tell you. I can't remember the exact time. Mike will remember. He'll remember that.
Uh-huh. Do you remember when you went off counsel?
Yeah, it's been too long ago. Let's see. before we moved
To the new bank building.
to the new building.
Yeah, I came in '82. I think you were of council by then.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was of council maybe a year or 2 years before that, if I'm not mistaken.
And the firm's changed quite a bit.
Oh yeah, sure have. All for the better.
Did you, as the years went by, I guess technology helped you some?
Oh yeah, sure did. It all changed. It all changed.
I remember mag cards when I came on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Those are probably a big deal at one
Oh
point.
yeah, sure was. Then it came in with all the new technology and all that sort of thing. We used to try and keep the library up, and we had a pretty good, fairly good working library that we tried to keep up. But of course, they had a good library in the courthouse. We spent we spent lots of time in the courthouse.
Are there any cases, as you look back over your career, other than one with the golf ball, any other cases that stand out as cases that were a real big deal at the time, or something humorous that you went through, or?
Offhanded, I don't remember anything. I'd have to think back to think of some of the silly things that happened to all of us. But I don't remember any particular one right now. I'll think about it. And if I do, I'll tell you what I can think of.
And how about like the Chaves County Bar? Has that changed much through the years?
Yeah, a great deal. The bar, when we used to have the bar meeting, the lawyers would all be there. Very seldom they wouldn't be there. And we used to have an annual barbecue, which you may have had since you've been here. In those days, it wasn't too bad to have. Don Brown was practical law then. We used to meet out at Don's house and barbecue chickens, and everybody would have a lot of beer to drink and a lot of camaraderie, and have nice, good parties. They generally have 1 or 2 a year, and we'd have a meeting about every 3 or 4 months. But the bar was real good. Everybody enjoyed it. We didn't always invite fellows from the other counties around. A lot of them would come. They were real socialized occasions, I'll tell you.
How would you say the practice has changed through the years, the practice of law?
Well, it's become highly technical, I think.
Has it gotten
and
better?
I think the things
worse?
you have at your disposal are so much more, so much better, and I think the research is much better and all than it ever was.
But
much faster, too. And of course, you've got a lot more litigation now than we had then. And the laws with respect to personal injuries have changed so much. They're not like they used to be. And the same thing's true of workman's compensation. Then all the title work, you see, we used to do lots of title work. The title work's all done by title companies now. That's gone. That used to be bread and butter for young lawyers, was title work. But that's all gone, you see. We don't do any of that anymore. And matter of fact, you see, you don't very many titles on ranches. We used to do lots of ranch contracts, farm contracts. We don't do any of those anymore because they're all title work.
You said there's a
You
lot.
would occasionally make contracts, but now the real estate people make all the contracts. They use a regular contract form. They didn't used to do that. They had to make a deal, then they'd go to a lawyer, and withdraw the contract. All that went by the wayside too.
You said there's a lot less litigation
Oh yeah,
in the past?
a lot less.
Like how often would you have a trial before a judge or before a jury?
Oh, well, I'd imagine we'd probably have, for the judge, I imagine we'd have 4, 5, or 6 a month.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
But before juries, why, not too often. Not too often. I'm trying to remember these negligence cases. I don't believe that those, if I remember correctly, I don't believe that the personal injuries workman's comp cases, I believe they were heard by the court. I don't believe they were heard by jury. I don't remember whether they were jury trial. Is it a jury trial now?
Workman's comp is still by a judge or administrative. Personal injury probably was by a jury.
Oh yes, personal injury then was by a jury too. But I think the comp then in those days was not.
It was by a judge.
Yeah, by the judge.
Yeah, I know family courts that way.
Yeah.
Are there any, looking back on your career, are there any clients that you were real excited about that came in and hired you, or any, I know you started doing the Indians work at some point, the Mescalero Apache.
Yeah, I did the Indians work, the Indians work, and I incorporated the racetrack when they started that. I did all that.
Ruidoso Sunland?
Ruidoso Downs, Ruidoso Racing. I did all that work and set that deal up for them. Representing Indians. I don't know how I happened to get that Indian contract. But
I think that was early '60s when they were incorporated.
Do you still go up there? Every year.
They still call. Yeah.
That's really something.
And the newspaper.
Yeah.
That goes back quite a while.
Yeah. I got that newspaper deal because Beck got mad at Jim Jennings.
Oh, really?
Over a fee. I represented Beck's father-in-law when Beck and his brother-in-law sued him to dissolve the partnership of the Roswell Daily Record and the Hobbs News Sun. And I represented the father-in-law, Marge's father. And Jim represented Bob and Joe Bill Jackson. And I think he charged him, I don't know what he charged him, but I think he charged him $50,000. And Beck got mad. And then he came to me. And I told him he'd have to get his files and all from Jim before I talked to him. And they did. And I've done whatever work they had to do. It never amounted to very much. I had 3 or 4 cases where they brought suit against the paper, you know. And the insurance company, I forget the name of their company always. They always paid us. We represented them.
Do you remember what year you picked up Beck as a client?
Oh, it must have been, I'd say that was in the 70s.
Really? Any other clients that you think of that you
I represent Hal Vogel, man.
Vogel?
Yeah, I probated Hal's estate. That's the biggest probate I ever handled.
Wow. How sizable was that?
The total of gross was about $42 million.
Wow.
And his share was about $8 million was his share of the estate. Pretty lengthy. It took a long time to do it because he had property scattered all over the country. Of course, we had to tussle with the IRS over the tax and so forth. It's a long drawn out deal.
Years and years. What's the biggest honor you've had during your career? Is there anything that jumps to mind? I know you've got the American trial lawyers.
American College of Trial Lawyers. I guess being inaugurated in that's one of the nicest things that ever happened to me.
Being what?
Inducted in the American College of Trial Lawyers. Because you have to have been practicing, I believe it's 15 years. And you had to have tried not a certain number of cases, but you had to have been active in the trial as either a plaintiff or a defendant's lawyer in numerous, lots of civil, quite a lot of civil trials. And I was inaugurated in that in 1966, when Leon Jaworski was president of the American College at the time, and it was right after Dr. DeBakey had done the first heart transplant. I'll never will forget it, because he was the speaker at that meeting of the American College. He'd done the heart transplant about 4 months before.
Wow.
And Jaworski had just gotten back from the Nuremberg trials. You know, he was a chief attorney, trial attorney in the Nuremberg trials.
Wow.
And it's been, I don't know that the college, being a member of the college, has ever gotten us any business. Probably has, we don't know it. But it's a very prestigious law group. They have about 3,000 or 4,000 members.
Small percentage.
Very small.
Any
Totally
other?
nonpartisan.
Really?
They won't get never involved in any politics like the bar.
Now you've been Democrat all your life.
Until lately.
Oh, really?
And then I vote for the man.
How did that work with, hasn't Bruno?
Did real well here because this was a Democratic county. Everybody was a Democrat. All the elected officers here were Democrats until 10, 12 years ago.
And anything else, looking back at your career, that any other honors or anything else that stands out that kind of you'd say would be a highlight of all the years you've been practicing?
No, I don't know anything in particular that ever happened to me that amounted to a great deal. I was president of the local bar, but of course they passed that around anyway. I never was very active in the state bar. Most of everything was done in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, and I think it still is.
What do you think about a firm that does an ambulance chase?
That does what?
An ambulance chase. Is it? You know, trying to look at it today. Did you ever imagine it'd be this way?
No, I never thought. I never dreamed it'd be this way. I think you all have done very well. And I think you have a good reputation, a good name. You got some real tough competition, though. Those old firms, they're real hard to wean those clients away.
Well, we're honored to have the Sanders name first.
Well, I feel honored that you do.
I sometimes wonder what it's like, though, from all the years that you've practiced. It's been over 50 now, huh?
Yeah.
With the time in Texas, you've got a 50-year
kin.
years, yeah. And I think of how different it is today. And, and I know when I came on with the firm, we were still somewhat small, and I wonder.
It's been 60 years. I've been a member of the bar for
60
almost
years.
60 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm 85.
I wonder if you ever wake up at night or sit there daydreaming.
50 years.
And you know.
Oh yeah, I wake up. Lots of times I think about the old days when I was here, everybody going up and down the hall, how much they're doing and how they're doing, and when I go back in the office where they post the books, I look back there, I just throw my hands up and walk away. Do you
do much practice anymore? You try to help people out much, or do you?
No, I do whatever I can to help the firm. I generally pick up 1 or 2 nibbles a year that I can get cost to the firm, or some of the fellows in the firm. No one in particular. If something comes up and I think Johnny can do it better than someone else, I refer him to Johnny.
Kind of pass it around.
Yeah.
And I guess next year will be 50 years that the firm's been around.
That's right. Is that right? 50 years.
If it was 44, I think we looked on your diploma, and I think it was 44. Or, no, it was 45 because we. Yeah, so we're still a year and a half away, but that'll have been 50
Long
years.
time.
Yeah.
Lots of water going under the dam.
Yeah. Well, let me go ahead and turn this off here.
Do it.